Welcome to another episode of Reimagined Energy. Imagine a school bus that can also be used as energy storage. It's the real deal. The Lion Electric Company is an innovative manufacturer of zero-emission vehicles. They design and manufacture all-electric school buses, minibuses, and urban trucks here in North America. I got a chance to talk to Christopher Ralph about how this company is actively seeking new technology. Hi, Christopher.
Good morning. How are you today, Maria?
I'm great. Thanks for joining me today. It was really great to meet you recently at the Smart Energy Conference in Halifax.
It was a pleasure to be there. We have a growing and expanding presence in Atlantic Canada, where I'm from, where my family's from. It was fantastic to be back home.
That's awesome. Now, you're with Lion Electric. And so tell everyone a little bit of what that company is.
The Lion Electric Company is North America's largest manufacturer of heavy-duty electric and medium-duty vehicles. What that means is we manufacture everything from Class A, C, D, and M buses, all the way through Class 5, 6, 7, and 8 trucks. Now, that seems like a very large gamut, and it absolutely is. We have about 1,500 vehicles on the road in North America, as well as a factory in Saint-Jérôme, Quebec, and a battery factory in Mirabel, Quebec. We are a made-in-Canada product, although we just opened up last year a 1 million square foot factory in Joliet, Illinois, to be compliant with Buy America. We can manufacture in the United States as well. And we have a network of 13 experience centers around North America where we can do on-site service, testing, design, we can do repairs, as well as do ride and drives for any potential customers who are out there looking to experience Lion. For the specific to Atlantic Canada audience, we have an experience center located in Moncton, New Brunswick, in the heart of Acadia, where we do service for our many customers around Atlantic Canada. We have trucks in service with companies like Day and Ross. One of our largest bus customers is the government of Prince Edward Island, who utilizes our electric buses all over the island and in the Charlottetown and Summerside regions specifically. And
Wow.
the company's been around since 2008, but we rolled our first electric buses off in 2016, and we're now an electric-only company. We're leading the way in sustainable mobility and climate change.
That's amazing. So having all of this, these e-buses and the manufacturing side, there's also requires a robust charging infrastructure that's needed. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's actually what my team does. So I manage the sustainable mobility division of the Lion Electric Company, where our team is responsible for the design, conception, procurement, implementation, and installation of electric vehicle charging. And that goes for both Lion fleets and non-Lion fleets, where really the conceptualization and understanding of how energy is going to be utilized inside the vehicles, but also more broadly and in a societal context as a form of propulsion. Because historically, energy is you use it or you use it or you lose it. It's going to be generated typically at a singular point, like think a Point Lepreau nuclear plant, or think the coal plant in Dartmouth. We're going to be generating large amounts of energy to be consumed. And with a vehicle, we're fundamentally altering that calculation. We are taking that energy and storing it in batteries, and those batteries are then being utilized in vehicles to move either people or product when the vehicles are necessary, and when a customer, or when a school board, or when a company decides that it's going to move product. Now, this also leads us to a wide variety of opportunities, because our vehicles are V2G compliant. V2G means vehicle to grid. That means our batteries are not just methods of propulsion for vehicles. We're actually utilizing our vehicles to backfill the grid. Whenever the grid requires energy, we can install, design, and deploy bidirectional charging installations, which are two-way flow of electricity through a charger. It means we can power the vehicle with the charger, or if there's a storm or an outage or a period of intensely high demand, we can push power back from the vehicles onto the grid.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So has that technology been around for a long time?
It's been around for, so it depends.
Yeah.
It's been around for quite some time. If you take a look at modern batteries in the small sense, we're doing it on DC charging, which means we require inverters to be in the charger, which is a much more recent development. And we are also doing it in spaces that haven't really been done before. So, for example, we're doing it in like black start technology, where there's no power behind the grid. We're doing it to bring up a community center that's been down after the power line was ravaged by a storm. So, yes, the technology has been around, but Lion is taking it to that extra level.
It's making a mobility. Yeah.
Yeah, like we really want to bring this to the next level, not understanding, like a Ford F-150 electric today. If you have an off-board inverter, you can power your house with it, which is fine. Powering your house is great. We're thinking much bigger scale. When there's a customer who has 1,000 electric school buses, what does that mean for the grid? Because 1,000 buses, you're the size of many hydro dams. You're the size of a small coal plant. What can that do for a community? What can that do for a government or a society or a community in the electrification of everything? What can it do for climate change resiliency? What can it do to combat carbon emissions?
Well, it's a brilliant idea because school buses are only used, at certain times of the year. They're not used in the evenings or the weekends in July and August, for that matter. So there's another purpose.
That's right.
Yes.
So we have ongoing projects right now in Florida. We have projects on the go in California and Prince Edward Island, actually. California is one of our most well-known projects. And again, it's the same thing. In a jurisdiction like California, you have periods of elevated electrical demand, as well as you have during your summer critical load on the grid, high heat, high humidity, tons of air conditioning load, deploying energy that can charge up overnight when there's very low carbon intensity on the grid and a very low price.
Right.
And being able to discharge that during the afternoon when there's high carbon intensity means that we're providing a source of zero emission electricity onto the grid at a very competitive price in an already capitalized asset that otherwise throughout the year, when there's less demand on the electrical grid, is going to be providing zero emissions transportation to school children with all the associated health benefits that come along with that. So it's very much win-win-win for everyone involved.
Exactly.
And so that's really what Lion Energy brings to the table. We're not a traditional energy company, and we're definitely not a traditional vehicle company. We very much sit at the crux of where those two intersect in the marketplace, and I think that shows with who's utilizing our vehicles. We have vehicles in service with.
Well, exactly. And you also have the accessibility buses as well that you're focusing on.
Correct. Yeah, equity, social equity and societal equity forms a very critical component of who Lion is and what we want to do as a company.
I was thinking the other day, during the school year, a lot of bus drivers, and I know it's like that in Atlantic, Canada. I don't know what it's like in other parts, but some school bus drivers keep their buses at home, parked in their driveways when they're not used. And then in the summer months, they're stored elsewhere. How would those drivers need to have special charging in place, or will it be a central place where they all charge?
It truthfully depends on the jurisdiction and the length of the routes. all over Canada and the United States where we have buses in service. And we have about 1,200-ish electric school buses in service. So we, we know what we're doing. We've done both. Uh, Centralized depots are fantastic for urban, suburban, and peri-urban environments where it's not a far ride for a bus driver to go from their house or from their apartment or condo to their depot to pick up a bus. It also centralizes and ensures that the infrastructure requirements are one shot. That means if you're a company who owns these buses, you now have one singular point of contact and control over your infrastructure. We have also deployed electric vehicle charging, typically AC charging, to people's homes because DC charging is typically requires a wider amount of infrastructure, and that's simply not going to be acceptable in someone's home. So we can do that. However, it is becoming less and less frequent in the industry, not just with Lion customers, as buses move towards DC charging systems. And with the higher infrastructure requirements, that typically necessitates a depot charging model. However, we very much do both, and we're doing both today.
Mm-hmm. So with these buses, electric buses, what is there special training involved? Do the drivers need to have a special knowledge in place?
So there's two answers here. There's the answer that is, politically correct and socially correct, and I think morally correct, and that is yes, drivers very much do need special training, and we do offer that from the Lion Academy. We're more than happy to come on site and teach your drivers about regenerative braking to ensure that you can maximize your range. For example, if you're in mountainous terrain and you're going downhill, it's not uncommon to regenerate 3, 4, 5% of your battery from, a single route. That's like getting 5% of a tank of fuel for free. So obviously you want that training. However, I'm an electric vehicle driver. Maria, you're an electric vehicle driver, and there is very much a temptation for a lot of people to just get in it and go and figure out, what happens. I will say that for just about every customer across North America, there are specific licensing requirements for drivers in class 5, 6, 7, 8 trucks, as well as for school buses. And typically there's training that can be augmented by the Lion Academy when we go in.
Right.
But again, there is nothing like having no training, getting into a Lion vehicle at a ride and drive. For example, next week, May 17th and 18th, you'll be able to get into a Lion truck in downtown Toronto at the EV Charging Expo and test out a Lion Class 6 truck. And there is nothing like getting into an electric vehicle for the first time. And just going.
Seeing the speed and the energy there. It's a great feeling. How long does it take to build or manufacture one of these vehicles? Like you said, they're made here in North America, which is great.
Yeah, they're made right in Saint-Jean, Quebec.
Yeah.
Anybody who's going from Montreal to Ottawa-Gatineau and wants to drive up Highway 15 or 50, anyone who's going to Mount Tremblant will go by our factory. Anyone going to Ottawa from Montreal will probably go by our battery factory right off of Highway 50. We're a made in Canada product. We're made in the U.S. product, and we're very proud of that. But we can do, on average, we can do about 30 school buses a week at full tilt.
Really?
Yeah, I would highly recommend taking a look at some of our videos on our YouTube channel. We have a factory tour where you get a chance to go through our Saint-Jean factory. And it is exceptionally impressive. It's very much a privilege to work for this company and to see how much it's grown over the last few years. You can go through our public reports and figure out specifically where we are. And, just last quarter, we set a record with 220 vehicles delivered.
It's
like it
amazing.
was,
Well,
yeah,
all you can do is just go to your career page and see all the job listings and the postings that are there for the manufacturing side of it. I mean,
that's
the
correct.
people
Yeah.
are needed. Yeah.
Yeah, when I first joined Lion, I'm one of the veterans in the company. I've been around since early 2020, we'll say.
Yeah.
And when I joined, we had 300 employees and a little bit less than 300 employees, and we're almost at 2,000 now. So
Wow. That's great. That just shows the industry and the interest, for this type of technology. During the Smart Energy Conference, you were part of a panel and you sat in and one of the things you talked about was how electricity will overload the grid, if all mobile electric vehicles are charged at night. And you guys all talked about non-peak Sunday will not be sustainable. And how should we rethink this? What are your thoughts there?
So I don't think that electric vehicles will ever overload the grid. I think they're going to fundamentally alter the way the grid interacts with mobility. How that's going to occur is it's going to occur in two ways. And I'll use Ontario as a sample jurisdiction here because it is very much the most populous part of Canada, and it's just a great example. Ontario often sells power at a loss overnight, and it charges a lot more during peak hours to generate because Ontario's demand during peaks is up here, and overnight it runs on baseload. And making up that difference is done through peaker plants, it's done through renewables. There's a wide variety of market mechanisms. And of course, conservation is the cheapest form of electricity generation. You don't need to generate what you don't need. All of those things are going to hit critical mass with electric vehicle adoption, where we're going to need to understand conservation, demand management, and demand response. And electric vehicles are going to offer a solution to all of that. So at night, the price of electricity is much cheaper because you have to run generating plants at a lower price of electricity. There's very little load at night. If all electric vehicles are charging up at night, you suddenly have a customer for all that electrical load, which means you do not need to sell it at a loss. You can basically give it away at very cheap prices. And we're seeing this in jurisdictions like British Columbia and Ontario. British Columbia has special overnight charging rates for electric vehicles, and Ontario just introduced one as well, called the ultra-low overnight charging rate. And what they've done is they're going to give you, for demand under 50 kilowatts, principally residential, they're going to basically say it's now 2 cents a kilowatt hour to charge overnight. And that is the cheapest electricity rate in North America right now, 2 cents a kilowatt hour. And at demand, at peak, it's no longer going to be 21 cents a kilowatt hour. It's going to be 30 cents a kilowatt hour. They're going to increase the stratification between when it's cheap and when it's not cheap. They want to disincentivize you from consuming during peaks and incentivize you to consume when they're basically giving electricity away. They're going to
Interesting.
find new customers, and they're going to disincentivize consumption during high stress periods on the grid. So that's going to be one thing that we're going to see a lot of going forward. And the second thing we're going to see a lot of going forward is called DER, or distributed energy resources. And these are going to be small-scale solar, small-scale wind, and small-scale battery operations, as well as electric vehicles. EVs are going to play a huge role in that because, as I mentioned previously, they're moving batteries. There's going to be vehicle-to-grid technology coming. It's already here with the Ford F-150 electric, and it's already here with the Nissan Leaf. It's already here on any Lion school bus that's rolling around Canada today. How's that going to interact with the grid? And today, it's okay to have one or two of them. What happens when a fleet of 500 or 1,000 of these is rolling around? What does a fleet of 5,000 of them in Toronto mean? Let's assume, for example, that in a city like Toronto, you do have a site that has 1,000 buses. Even discharging at 50 kilowatts, 1,000 buses moving at 50 kilowatts each means you now have 5 megawatts to play with.
It's rolling around.
What are
Yeah.
you going to do with that?
It's amazing. I could see it being used for like remote locations or festivals and events. You know, you
Exactly.
can
Sorry, you'll
rent
have
them.
50. You'll have 50 megawatts. My brain is
That's
turned to
okay.
mush right now. But with 50 megawatts, like that's a hydro dam.
Yeah.
That is a hydro dam. If you deploy that for 2 hours, 50 megawatts inside the downtown will shift the peak. You will
Wow.
shift the peak inside that hour, which has very deep ramifications when you're thinking about industrial conservation and how you design industrial conservation programs to incentivize how people are going to pay their global adjustment, which is the difference between the cost of generation and the price of generation. How are these programs going to come into play? And the options that electric vehicles provide are going to allow our grids to be much more flexible in responding to demand. I truthfully don't think that we're thinking about the question correctly. People who are saying electric vehicles are going to break our grid simply do not see what's coming. What's coming is the single greatest opportunity we have had to re-envision the way our grids operate and to integrate renewables and clean electricity into our grids. This is not just the clean energy revolution. This is the clean mobility revolution.
Awesome. Well, it's like reimagined energy all over. It's
Yeah.
kind of hence this podcast, right?
Yeah, we're really talking about, how quick this is going to come. And like, it's already here in multiple jurisdictions. Prince Edward Island is leading on this. Other jurisdictions in Canada want to get in on this as well. Within 5 years, what we're talking about is going to be commonplace. And it's a necessity that we're going to have to react to. It's better for us to start reimagining what our grids could look like in the future and to not hamstring ourselves. The possibilities here are very much endless. You brought up the panel that I'm sitting on. There are people like Sanjeev from Nova Scotia Power who are very much leaders in this space, who want to make these changes and who want to understand what the grid of the future is going to look like and how they can best position themselves to do so.
Yeah, exactly. So on that final note, what's next for Lion Electric?
That's a fantastic question. We're not content to just sit on our laurels and to sell the greatest electric school bus that's on the market today. I think our Class 6 truck is one of the best on the market, and we're not content to just sit on that. This year, we're releasing our electric ambulance that's going to be... Yeah, I know.
That's
It's
awesome.
an electric ambulance built in conjunction with Demers, who we provide the Class 5 chassis for it. And that I think is a major announcement. That I think is definitely something to look forward to. As well, we just announced a vehicle to grid pilot with the government of Prince Edward Island to backfill community centers when there's an outage, like a hurricane that rolls through.
Wow.
People should look to our buses and see them not just as clean mobility, but as very much the way the future of energy is going to be consumed and utilized as a method of propulsion.
That is amazing. Vehicle to grid, new thinking, or just it's actually probably been thought of before, but you guys are taking it in another way.
That's what we want to hear. Lion is very much a market leader in this space. We don't want to rest on our laurels. I think we're always finding new ways to push ahead and to always be ahead of the game. And I think that shows in our vehicles. When you take a look at who they're in service with, our trucks are being driven around by, Day and Ross and IKEA and, Amazon. And they're being run 18, 20 hours a day. We're very much showing that electricity can be cheaper, can be cleaner, can be more sustainable, and can very much lead to a better bottom line and a better society at the same time. And I think we stand by those values.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christopher, for your time today, and all the best. Next time I'm driving to Mont Tremblant, I'll give you a call when I'm on my way. You'll have to give me a tour.
Please do. You'll go right by us on Highway 15. Thank you so much for your time, Maria.
Thanks, Christopher. Bye. The grid powers vehicles, but then turning that around so the vehicles power the grid. That's reimagined energy right there, folks. Thanks to Christopher Ralph of Land Electric for joining me today. They're Canada's homegrown e-bus and e-truck manufacturer right in Quebec. Do take part in one of their experiential drives next time you're in Toronto or in the Montreal area. Thanks for joining me today. This is Reimagined Energy. Click that subscribe button and we'll talk to you next time.